We're on. I think we're recorded now. Hi, everybody. Tim asked us to do a little recording about what the Allies thought of the day, just as a response to what he's saying. As I did end up watching this video in the end because I really wanted to figure out what he was on about. And then I just thought I'll just ask Ritchie to join us and see what he makes of it. And let's see what we thought about it. Okay, so first thing, one of the things Tim said 5 minutes in, and I have got a little bit of kind of timestamps on some of these things just to kind of keep it coherent because he's the kind of YouTube king. I'm just the kind of rank amateur at this. So 5 minutes in, he had said that he thought the French came on pretty hard and there was a concern that the game wouldn't have lasted the 2 days. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, I would probably agree with him. And I think the main reason is that the Allies, we came on in dribs and drabs down the road.
We did.
Whereas the French, they just deployed. They were just there, attack column, ready to go. General Dan bypassed Jericho Farm, which is, he had one little go at it, but it wasn't the hindrance that that you had to get rid of it. General Chris on the left flank, the French left flank, he obviously had hedges and crops and trees, so he couldn't advance. Whereas once General Tim was over the river, that was it. There was nothing really to stop him. And we also, what we got on, most of it came on either to the right of the crossroads or on the crossroads.
Yeah.
Probably there maybe wasn't enough attention given by all of us to terrain, because reading about the battle, there was a lot of crops. The only people that could see what was going on were people on horses.
Right. So there was rolling terrain and crops up.
There's crops, and it was actually just after having another read of it today. There's a couple of books that I've got that I quite like, and we're maybe as well, if we're going to redo it again, maybe have had some sort of, for both sides, some sort of hidden movement or use blank markers for units so they didn't know what was coming on.
I was thinking the exact same thing, because when I was reading about it too, I've got to say, before we get into it, now this is anything against what Jonathan did, because it's almost impossible, because the French came on so hard and pressured us so fast, where in reality, they were bricking it because they didn't know what was in front of them.
Yeah.
They hadn't a clue, and they were going, hang on a minute, there could be millions of them behind there, and they were all a bit really cautious.
As well, across where we had the one small house to represent the farm, in front of, for instance, the Nassau troops, there was a farm there. And on the French right flank, where General Tim came on, there was a little hamlet there, which was held by the Dutch. Once they saw the French, they realised how many there was. They retired, but it all just bought time for the Allies. And maybe that wasn't represented. Don't get us wrong, Jonathan did an absolutely outstanding job putting together everything. But maybe all of us as a team, maybe we just didn't put enough effort into what the terrain should have looked like.
You see, I'll just bow down to you guys that are more. You guys know how the game works, and I know that in Black Powder there is a really fine balance where you could really have too much of a good thing, and it looks epic, but the game just grinds down, and folk can't move in that. I mean, I don't know how you feel. I know that when we've played, it becomes more hassle than it's worth. Look cool on camera, but
it depends, because, for instance, Tim and I played this scenario before. We played at Newark, and although we weren't counting the hedges as cover, it was just there for show. I felt really, I wasn't too keen on the supplement rules, so I stood and delivered close and fire. I didn't use the steady rule line. Worked okay. Look at the dice, but just with not having as much terrain as there should have been, it meant the cavalry could get across much faster. The highlight of the game for me was we had that great big cavalry melee in the middle of the table. Although it happened at the battle, there was some action. It wasn't as easily done as it was in our game, but don't get us wrong, it was a cracking game, really enjoying game. But I think, let's not take anything away from Tim. He did everything that was required of him in the route, in the scenario, everything he had to do to get round that flank. But there was nothing to hold him up.
No, that's it. I just don't know how you could make because Tim knows that all and as an aggressive player, Ivan plays the same, believe it or not, even though he got absolutely cuffed when he was playing the Highlanders in our game. When Ivan's playing French as well, he's super, super aggressive. The thing is, they have hindsight and they know that the Allies are going to come on piecemeal. The troops are going to be mediocre until the good stuff arrives. We had random arrival points, which is fair enough. And I think that aggressive French play in that isn't really true to the historical events in the day, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean? They can kind of carry it through. Again, I don't know how you'd actually game that. How do you do that?
Well, it's interesting because there's a book by, I can't remember, Mr. Dawson, who does a Nay's Quatre Bras.
Oh, yeah.
Something that actually represented the game ideally was that how Jonathan handled the French cavalry, just throwing them at the British lines, which is really what Kellerman did.
Aye.
Some of it worked, some of it didn't. And interestingly, 2 days later, Ney just repeated the same thing again, didn't he? Where he just lets throw some cavalry at the. And there's other things, but I think black powder's there where we can make it do whatever we want to do it. Again, if we were going to replay it, I'd probably suggest that, for instance, the rifles and the Dutch Jaegers, they used the option to be able to split down into companies rather than being full units.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly, I think, black powder, and I know you're working on your skirmish rules, black powder, we need to look harder at how, what something is maybe just it's not a Hougoumont, it's not a Le Haye-Saint, it's just a built-up area. Are they too powerful to defend? Because that,
well, you had some scum in there, didn't you? They're still there. They're still there to this day.
Small militia. Mine, to be fair, I'm not sure if General Dan's attacked the build-up area before, but if he'd thrown 3 attack columns into one side, 3 attack columns into the other side, I don't think it would last. But he decided to bypass it, which is great tactics, because when he bypassed it, he destroyed the rest of the brigade.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I've been daydreaming about that as well, and that's something we'll definitely need to think about when we're thinking about all the built-up areas around the Linkney battlefield. I mean, I don't know how we're going to actually do it, because I mean, from what I read on that, they went tit for tat, and you'd knock somebody out of a building, then it'd be occupied by you, then you'd be knocked out, and somebody else would be in. That, I think that would be a guy crap game for somebody to be involved in. You know, if they're driven all the way for have another game and just grinding it out.
Because in a build-up area, that all you get is destroyed. Can you imagine that? You turn up and someone does attack, just as I've seen, you're attacking it with the flank of one side, and that's it, destroyed. And as I mentioned in the game, build-up areas, for instance, they can support, but they can't be supported.
Yeah.
So someone that's in the build-up area next to them, because the rules actually state something like, and in theory, so if the house next to them, so if you've got a row of 3 houses, you could find attack and break the middle one. The 2 houses either flank could have to take a support test. And just imagine it'd be like poor Ivan travelled all that way just for Tim to send him home. You know,
bloody Tim, terrible, so nasty.
Well, I did mention this earlier. Tim is going to do a highlight of my good dice rolls, but he's struggling to get over 30 seconds worth of content on that, so it's going to be a struggle for him.
You certainly had the curse, and then your curse kind of spread around.
Yes,
virus, like almost a COVID virus.
Well, sometimes because you look and you think, oh well, I've rolled poorly there, so it'll balance out here. To be fair though, if we looked at it, you know, the Nassau, for instance, had some terrible dice saving rolls. The Dutch were doing okay till that unit broke, and then the 2 supports went. That was, but then you look on the other side and you say, well, look at my cavalry. Look how, you know, I had some luck with the cavalry, and poor Jonathan had some poor luck. So it does.
That's something that I was going to come on to later. Is the swinginess nature of it, because that's something that Jonathan had to juggle. Now, he was games mastering it at the same time, and he's watching the ebb and flow of the game, and he said, okay, make a roll here and see if somebody comes on. And that's super, super hard with black powder because, it's you can give it too much one way, and then how do you bring it back? And before you know, the whole thing's out of control. Somebody's steamrolled somebody, and the game's a bogey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was almost like he was a director of a movie, and he needed to make it. He needed to make it last the 2 days, and I think he did that.
Yeah,
I don't know how else he could have done it.
I think for me, I know the Duke of Wellington was killed, but something that I actually thought about afterwards is to give the Allies that little bit more. Perhaps what you could have had is you could have had the Duke of Brunswick got a re-roll for the Brunswick troops. Wellington got a re-roll for the British troops, and either Paponcha or the Prince of Orange, he got a re-roll for those troops. Interestingly, I'd forgotten today because I just went to check something on my book today about the Battle in the Woods, and the Prince of Orange gets a really bad sort of war gamers treat them really, really bad.
Oh yeah, historically he's absolutely tarred with a shit stick.
Yes, but and I had never noticed this in my book before. When he was trying to rally the Nassau troops, he got on his horse and he was waving his sword in the air, and he actually cut himself in the thigh. Maybe the bad sort of crack that said about him is absolutely true. I don't know.
How long did he last in our game? Did he just bugger off straight off the bat? Just run away?
Well, of course, what you got to remember, this is why I was suggesting that maybe each nation had their own re-roll.
Aye.
And Clash of Eagles does give something for, I think, the higher up the order you go, the more re-rolls you get. So maybe Arthur could have had a couple of re-rolls. But once Arthur comes on, that's they don't really serve any, it's because it's brigades, but divisional commanders don't really serve a purpose if you use it as it is. But Clash of Eagles have introduced some, and some of the optional rules I like. Some of them I'm not so sure. At one time I liked the idea of, for instance, British steady line. Now I'm not so sure I like that rule. It's the same as lines being charged by cavalry having to pass an order test. I'm not sure I agree. I think it takes a little away from how the rules are designed. But if folk like them, that's up to people to decide if they want to use them.
Because that was the other thing that Tim mentioned. Funnily enough, just while we're on that, Tim was mentioning about Chris in the woods. Now you were in the woods with your Nassau, and you were fighting Chris. Now, as you say, Chris had a hell of a lot of crap in his way. Like Tim was just galloping and charging across a golf course for all intents and purposes.
Well,
Chris had a lot of crap.
Chris was taking on the biggest brigade that we deployed on the day. The troops, he decided to go into line, which was probably the right thing to do. When we played this game at Newark, Anthony Bagshaw commanded the Nassau, and he commanded them very well. And the late Andy, he went into the woods. He didn't have anywhere near the success. He went in the attack column. He didn't have anywhere near the success that Chris had. And on the real battlefield as well, by the way, that the initial French attacks more often not were an open order line, extended order line with skirmishers. And I think there were open woods. Chris could have gone ploughing in, but it worked for him. He destroyed the biggest brigade that there was.
Did Chris take many casualties? Because I never saw him scooping off loads of dead stuff.
I think he might, maybe a couple of battalions at most. But again, I was looking up the historical records for Quatre Bras, and there were about 5,000 aside casualties. But when you read about the amount of units that were apparently dispersed, it's not 5,000 is not a big figure. Like, again, I read about it again today, and Jerome's division was meant to have been dispersed with charges, and yet they were there fighting at Waterloo 2 days later. So that's the other problem that we have with black powder, how we decide. We were talking about if we're going to use it for a campaign. If a unit's burst, does it come back as smaller? Does it come back with a stamina pip? just come back with nothing, because the British Guards at Quatre Bras were really tired when they got there. They had a really big forced march, and they took a lot of casualties on the battlefield, yet they were all there still at Waterloo a couple of days later. So that's maybe something, Tim does his channel and likes to give ideas. Maybe that's something that you could look at.
I think that'd be amazing, having some kind of campaign-y way. I mean, the thing is, that was one of my regrets. Now, this is interesting. Tim mentioned it as well, that we hadn't actually met up. I'd met you before and whatnot, but we hadn't actually met up for a kind of shindig like this before. We tried, obviously, but the COVID came, ruined everything. But and then when I spoke to Jonathan, he was under no illusions that this was just, let's see what happens here. We'll get guys from, let's try wee bits and bobs. And it seems almost a shame that we actually just, we kind of wasted something so pivotal straight out of the gate.
Yeah.
But I don't think we could. Can we go back and refight it, or should that result stand? Because the way I was thinking about it, as we've just said, there's no way to refight a historical battle is fun, but everybody knows what happens. Like, for example, Tim could come on super, super aggressive because he knew that we only had the top quality Brunswick, the top quality Brunswickers there holding the crossroads. And he could also see what was streaming down the road. There was bits and bobs, but didn't know where they were coming on. So really the only way to play a true game of Black Powder is complete what if.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, because I have said this, obviously you and I played that game, The Attack on the Ridge. Mm-hmm. We're not doing a reenactment. We're playing a war game that's just based on a battle or a scenario or whatever we want to base it on. I do think that this was our tester. This was for us all to get together to see, what did we think? Is there anything we'd tweak? And I think that's the only thing that I think if we were to do it again, I would say the French, and especially if we're going to do it over 2 days again, because it's sort of, the Sunday was just over and done too fast, but I think it was a virtually foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
We chatted via Messenger, and I think once we moved that road, it actually had helped the French as well, because
that's what I was going to mention to you next. Tim mentions that. That was quite a biggie, that one, which was the basically wind in the terrain.
Yeah.
Now, Tim mentions it as well. Now, it was interesting because we were thinking, no, that's great because it'll give the British. I'm doing it now myself now. It was only British kind of left and Hanos, so it'll give them space to deploy. But it actually had the reverse effect. It just the French had more space to squiggle around, which is interesting. I honestly, when we were doing it, I never gave that a thought once. Said, "Oh, the French, Tim's going to come right round here now." It never even came in my head.
But again, on that, when we moved the road again, because nobody was really, whether it was because everyone was a little bit hungover, but we never put the rest of Quatre Bras on. I'm not sure what the Belgian pronunciation, but I think the English is Cherry Wood. So to the left is Cherry Wood. There was also another bit of high ground. So there was apparently the road had hedges on, which we never put on in the start. So there was a lot of terrain that we missed off, and just where I brought that British battalion brigade on the very left, if I'd possibly known that was going to happen, I would have probably brought them on behind Quatre Bras, and then there was still General Clive had more Hanoverians to come on. We could have formed quite a defensive pocket, and when we moved the table as well, we lost that little farmhouse at the back, which was causing little bits of nuisance.
It was niggly. Yeah.
And so, things like that maybe went against us, but it was an enjoyable game.
But that's interesting because, like, and I loved that because that was a total surprise to me in the morning. Just said, "Gosh, we're going to move it. That's quality, amazing." Now, I hadn't planned for any of that in my stuff. I mean, I was still moving forward to engage Tim's stuff. Just go, let's have a game of it. Come on. Where really, if we'd actually been kind of a bit more stick in the muddy guys, you as well, we'd be kind of hanging back and kind of going, oh no, just retreat back because we're going to get another 2 foot in the morning kind of crap. You know what I mean? I think we played the role well of keeping the game fun and going. I mean, if everybody played in a serious manner, what would it be? Just horrible.
Yeah, no, I think that was one thing that came out of it is everybody in that room was there to have some fun, and you know, there was no contention.
I never heard any the whole weekend, none.
It was all just about having a good time. Everyone got on well, as you said. Most people were just meeting for the first time, and it was how Black Powder is meant to, and how I want to play my war games. By the way, that if someone comes in to play me and all they want to do is win, I'll not even they might as well just say go home and tell their wife they've won. Because I want to just have some fun. I want to roll dice. I want to enjoy myself.
I think Rick Priestley would be quite proud that we actually had our game. I mean, even before we didn't have the curry on the Saturday night. We had our curry on the Friday night, but we had drinks on the Saturday. We all had banter. Went for a few pints. I came in on the Sunday a bit bleary-eyed, finished it through, and which brings me to the last part, which was even though that the Duke joined that Leap battalion that was standing firm for a wee while till the Duke needed to join them. Now that seemed like a cherry on the top of the cake as a absolute finish to the weekend. Like there was no squibbling around saying, "Oh well, I think we'll call it a little scabby little draw." It was like, "Oh flip, we were hammered and then hammered some more, and then hung, drawn, and quartered and minced."
I think if we'd wanted to, we could have went on, but part of me thought, well, if this is, you know, we're playing a reenactment or we're playing a scenario, and we hadn't really written anything down to what would happen. As soon as the Duke was killed, that would have been the British, I think, you know.
Oh, they'd be away.
Hungarians would have done, but the British would have wanted their army out of there and they would have been marching back. Massive change for it, and when you stood on our side of the table looking at it, I don't know what you thought, but I saw loads of French cavalry, I saw loads of French infantry. Well, you know, we could have stuck a couple of more troops in the, you know, if we remembered about the houses, we could have stuck some in Quatre Bras. We could have sat it out for the draw, but we're there to have some fun. And
exactly. I mean, that wouldn't be a game. But I mean, that's interesting. I've been thinking about this for if you were refighting Quatre Bras, and I know somebody else on one of the other groups who were in a million groups had been saying about scouting things. Now, say you had a series of games that culminated in an epic one. Like Quatre Bras, I'd say, is a pretty big pivotal battle. So people could go away to their clubs and play different skirmishy actions and whatnot. But that would maybe allow you to, instead of, for example, my Brunswick Hussars and Uhlans, quite rightly, it was just a roll of dice and that's your entry point.
Yeah.
So perhaps if you were playing a game previous to that, you could maybe choose that entry point, for example, or get a re-roll on your entry point roll. Or do you know what I mean? That kind of thing, because you've actually learned something about the terrain or something like that. I don't know. It just, I mean, what I do find that things do seem to kind of fall like Skittles in Black Powder, and a game finishes, and I quite like that as well. But it's really difficult to pull it back when it starts, though.
Well, I think as well, because, for instance, this game we've just finished, if the Duke hadn't been killed and we're going to fall back to Monsengin Ridge, then there was that cavalry action. There was a lot of British cavalry still lurking around to protect the army retreating there. That, as you said, that little skirmish could have been played out at another, you know, it didn't have to everybody to get together. It could have just been 2 or 3 guys at either Tim's club, your club, my club, could have played that little skirmish out. The Ligny game, mind up looking at trying to do Ligny, it just seems absolutely massive area, a lot of troops, and I know you've got your skirmish rules which might not fit for this, but we do need to tweak Black Powder for buildings, I think. And if there's anybody that watches this or watches Tim's channel that's got any ideas, really be welcome to hear them.
Aye, because otherwise, all that'll happen is, I mean, I remember when we were playing, we were doing some play testing for the great game, and then like, and I remember Chris Stone, who was there as well and helped us do some play testing bits. He was just going, buildings and black powder, ugh, ugh, just keep away from them. And he was right. It's not because it is rank to get involved in a kind of protracted urban kind of contact, but. It's just, but I'm sure Rick said this as well somewhere, or I read something, or I saw him say something. It's not meant for that. It's as simple as that. It's just not meant for that.
Yeah.
You know, we're trying to force it into the wrong shaped hole. So,
perhaps because we've been, you know, we're treating them as a chateau, as I say, as somewhere like Ligny, Cinnamon, that we could Cinnamon here. There were some big buildings, churches, but there were also just lots of ordinary houses. So we maybe just need to categorise the built-up areas a little bit more to say, well, you get a saving throw of this, or a combat resolution of 1, not 3, because it isn't such a big area. But I do think the bit that all that happens is you're either killed. I think that that option 5 or 6 where you maybe have to retire out of the built area. That might make it a little bit more interesting as well. It's not just you're there till you're killed.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, I think that's one of its. That's for us refrighting Ligny, and after you put that map up on the group chat, I mean, I'm still learning all this, and I fully didn't appreciate that. It's like it's a string of urban environments. It's not. I thought it was a bloody town. It's just one town, and that's it. And then, but is it hell?
When I've actually done a bit more research since then, and I've got 2 pretty detailed maps, and the problem that I'm going to have is I just haven't got enough bridges.
Sugar, do we know anybody that's an MDF cutter?
Oh, especially an MDF cutter that could give us some sort of discount.
That'd be quality. Maybe you could actually cut us like some river sections that we could just build up with caulk on the sides. Just
well, it's
be handy. That.
Not in mind as it is. Absolutely, if you're going to try and replicate it, but I think looking at all the little towns, all the little hamlets, I think if we're going to do it, we'll probably just have to do the central part of the battlefield, and rather than having a great big town, and the other problem is black powder. There's no scale. So,
hey, well, there's an idea. Maybe Tim would have some folk on his channel, seeing as I've only got like 61 followers. Maybe Tim has more. He might. Maybe we could ask some other folk around. We do one portion, somebody else does a portion. Hell, we could all do it on the same day. Skype in, do something mental. That'd be funny.
Especially if we've got the ability to go live, it could be done. But I think I do like the 28mm buildings. I think they look tremendous. I've got a couple of talented fellas, James Sharp and Jeff Lacey, that make terrain for me, and they're absolutely beautiful. And I want to put them on the table, and I want them to look good. And so I don't want to be going down to smaller buildings, but I do think us as a group of players together that are going to hopefully play more games together, we need to maybe just think of ways to make them better to have on the table. Just you plonk the unit in there and it's sat there till it's killed.
Yeah, that's pretty junk. Oh well. Well, I think that was been a brilliant chat, and I think I don't even know how long we've been on. Oh, half an hour. That's as long as Tim's was.
Longer than I thought.
So that's cool. But thanks very much for joining us. That was really lovely and very insightful as well. And again, thanks very much from everybody for opening your massive shutter door and let us into the Ultimate Man Cave.
Anytime.
Thanks a million.
Thanks again. Take care.
Cheers.